At any time, though, it would be good to introduce ourselves.
Sure.
For the thing. So, I guess I will go ahead and start introducing this brand new podcast that myself, Bulletberry,
Rasan,
and Jonathan Yoder
have decided to come together and start. And we've named it the. Did we name it?
So, define critical thinking. Rasan, you want to try that?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm a little unprepared, but yeah, okay, let's see. Define critical thinking. I think it is the act of separating oneself from a situation to the extent that you can consider its implications, its the greater context of a thing as objectively as possible.
Do emotions have anything to do with it?
Not in the context of critical thinking, I don't think, because thinking critically about something is to critically examine it, which I think is not an emotional process.
So you're saying removing emotions as well as yourself?
Just trying to think objectively about something, which I think is kind of fundamentally not an emotional process. Like that's something that you do with your mind. You apply logic, you apply criticism to a set of choices, say, and come up with what you think is the best one based on logic, based on information that you have.
Okay. And I'm assuming to the best of your ability, right?
Always,
because
yeah.
you cannot remove emotion completely. It's just as much as possible.
But I think in to that extent, I think critical thinking is kind of a scale, right? Like,
okay,
someone could be thinking critically to the best of their ability, but if someone is a particularly emotional person or has trouble separating themselves from a particular situation they're trying to consider, then they're thinking less critically than someone else might be about that situation, right? So there's a spectrum.
Okay. May I give you a hypothesis to try to test your definition?
Hypothesize.
Okay, so or an example.
The penetration tester.
Right.
The critical penetration tester.
So,
it doesn't work.
So my test in this, without emotion involved, is there are two people. They're about to die. There's a guy in front of both of them with a gun, and he says to you, they have the same exact profession. They're the same exact gender. They're the same exact age. They've had all the same exact numbers of family members, all the same age. They're pretty much the same person. I'm gonna kill one of them. Tell me how you critically think or determine which one dies.
Okay, so first of all, if I can just be John Yoder for a moment.
Okay.
Kill them both.
Slowly.
Yes. Slowly.
Yeah, so I think the only way to think critically is with information that you have, right?
One is your friend and one isn't.
But
what about the guy gave you the gun, and he said he's gonna kill everyone in your family. He's got them there, right? Unless you pick one to kill.
So, I mean, what I was going to say is, unless you have more information, it's arbitrary, right? Like, if what you know about them is the same, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
flip
which
of
one
a coin at that point, yeah.
right?
So but what I was trying to get at is with putting emotions involved. I think that sometimes critical thinking can involve. I was trying to come up with a situation where critical thinking can involve emotions. So one of them is a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Right? Or you at least have respect for one of them. Even though they're pretty much the exact same person, you've gotten to know one of them. Would it be logical to pick the one that you know because of only that very reason in that situation?
I think the idea that it would be imbalanced because you know and like someone would change your decision fundamentally, right? Because you know someone, you're more likely to see them probably as a good person. If they're a friend of yours, presumably
you agree with what they do.
You like them, yeah. And so you'd be more inclined to try to save them. Personally, I would ask which one would pay me more money. And then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, logically.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just trying to test your because you said emotions out of it as much as possible. So I was trying to get a situation where emotions could be in a situation where it's so objective you have to use nothing but emotion to help you out.
So I mean, I think perhaps a better question might be if if it's skewed logically against your friend, then what would you do? You know, if it's like if one person was a doctor that you knew was working on child cancer research, and the other person was your friend who was a mildly good person but wasn't necessarily doing anything amazing to change the world, how does that affect your decision? But Barry's on the internet.
Thanks, man. He's not wrong.
So then in that kind of question, then it's like, how much are you willing to sacrifice in order to save your friend?
Mm-hmm.
You know, knowingly taking someone out of the equation who would probably do good for a lot of people, versus somebody that you know and love, or at least like a lot.
That one to me seems like an easier answer, though. I would pick the guy who would potentially save lives. You know,
To kill or save?
to save.
Okay.
I would save his life. That one seems easier to me than a doppelganger situation where I don't have much
Interesting.
more to rely on.
Well,
I think that's also because you don't have feelings, though.
That I swear to God. Okay, so I watched. And it's a little off topic. My apologies.
Finding Dory and it didn't cry. You heartless son of a bitch.
I
you
didn't
animal.
though. Like that's not a sad movie. But no. Vsauce. He's got this.
Oh yeah.
He's got this YouTube Red series, and the first season 1 and episode 1 and season 2 episode 1 are free on YouTube just to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the episodes goes into that the train thing where like you got the one guy and the five people
okay.
and how would people react, and they actually set it up where it could be, you know, and people were for flipping switches and everything, and I had my friend watch it. And he came back to me, and I had no idea he would have this response.
Mm-hmm.
It was Muttley.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, the second I watched that video, something just snapped in my mind, and I realized, you're a psychopath. And I was like, that's really just random. And he goes, no, because like, I thought about, for some reason, throughout the episode, something clicked in me, and I was like, Barry would react this. He's a psychopath.
Interesting.
And I was like, you know what's weird about that is everyone I've ever worked with has said the same thing. You know? And it was all in the context of the, you know, don't be with Barry in a dark alley, he'll kill you. You know, like a joke, but it's based on that kernel of truth. You know what I mean? Those
Sure.
kinds of jokes.
Yeah, because
so it was like,
yeah.
am I? Anyway, it's off topic, but it was just something that...
We should totally get into psychopaths sometime. Okay, but trying to keep it more back to
Right.
the point.
My apologies.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just on...
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Barry, what's your definition of critical thinking?
Yes. So I think critical thinking would be... I had a really simplified answer while Rasan was giving his. I think something to the idea of taking something into consideration, a point of view, a worldview, something like that, into consideration that goes against your worldview, but looking at it objectively anyway, as though it could be a possibility.
So, trying to factor a negative correctly.
Possibly. I mean, a negative to you, though, because if it were like I was religious
Mm-hmm.
and I wouldn't want to hear anything about evolution, but then me thinking, you know, there's a lot of evidence for.
So kind of open-mindedness.
Open-mindedness.
Yeah,
Open-mindedness.
it doesn't have to be negative, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, it could be, you know, someone says macaroni and cheese is amazing, and you don't agree. I mean, you're a monster if you don't agree, but you don't agree, and so you decide you're going to think critically about it and try to imagine why other people might like macaroni and cheese, even though you don't. Like that's thinking critically about macaroni and cheese.
Which is a small thing to do it, but it's a good start.
Exactly.
I mean, if you can start at mac and cheese, you can work your way up.
Definitely.
It's funny coming from the lactose intolerant guy.
Macaroni and cheese is delicious. I absolutely love that.
I
shit.
eat it with ketchup.
In fact, there's a really
Psychopath.
good. Seriously, there's a really good vegan restaurant actually in Portland that makes macaroni and cheese, and they always serve it in these little dishes, and I could eat like 5 of them. I swear to you, and the stuff is I think, and I'm a little biased, but I think it's actually better than most of the regular dairy
Nice.
mac and cheese I've had. It's
Very nice.
super delicious.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's basically fat and carbs, so I completely agree.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
And actually, macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, and ketchup.
Altogether?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I never put hot dogs in it. It
Okay.
never feels
You
very...
see that as a
it never
kid?
tastes very... Well, the thing is, because, okay, it might be good if it was real mac and cheese and real hot dogs, but I always got it in that peasant family style where I had the Kraft macaroni with the crappy little hot dogs that you get from, like, Ray's food place. You know what I mean?
Did you just call your family a peasant family?
No, 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 no.
He is totally working the fields.
I never-
While those goddamn overlords
I
are
never
breaking in
said-
all of the benefits from him and his poor family.
I never specified where I got the meal from. I'm just saying.
You're robbing peasants?
That was what I got too, yeah. Damn, dude.
Jeez.
We need
This is-
WD-40 for this shirt.
This is going to be the one about
We
Barry
do.
being a psychopath.
Totally.
No.
Robbing peasants.
Yeah, man. Of their peasant macaroni and cheese.
I was legitimately trying to find a therapist, though. I'm curious.
I can't recommend a good therapist.
No, the ones that I
Yeah.
contacted, they were all like, "We don't do psychopath tests anymore," and I was like, "Okay, whatever."
Interesting. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know. I would just like to, because like enough people have said it where I don't actually believe it, but enough people have said it where I'm like, it'd be fun to take the test anyway, you know. And if it comes back positive, it's not like I've changed in any way. I'm the same person. I just
Yeah,
know something
yeah,
more about
exactly.
myself, you know.
And yeah, I don't think you're a psychopath.
I don't
But then
think so
again,
either.
Like at that point, a psychopath would be pretty good at hiding that they're a psychopath.
I don't think you're a psychopath, Barry. I think you just don't really give a shit about most things and
Well,
are confident, and I think that comes across sometimes as not
Empathetic.
like doing what you want. Yeah, and it comes across as not being very
Not
empathetic, which
empathetic.
people associate with that, you
Mhm.
know, and you're not like, oh yeah, we should like hang out and being all touchy feely.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, I cared when my dog died, and I care when, like, you know, things do affect me. So I was like, eh. But it would still be fun, you know, to take a psychopath test.
well, and if you're a psychopath, I probably am too.
Well, I'll write down the questions, and we'll find out.
if you don't hear from me again soon, you know what happened.
Oh man.
Okay, so sounds like your concept of critical thinking is
Just keeping an open mind. I think that critical thinking is keeping an open mind and being all right with the idea that you could be 100% wrong in what you believe.
Do you guys know the concepts of hard beliefs versus soft beliefs?
No, explain.
So in porn, man loves a woman. No. So the hard beliefs
I really thought he was
are
going to.
the ones that are absolute. The soft beliefs are the ones that you're like, you know, not actually that attached to. The hard beliefs are the ones that break your mind when you come up against evidence that they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The soft beliefs are the ones that, mac and cheese is the best in the world. Oh, no, now I like pizza more. And so that
Right.
belief that mac and cheese was the best thing in the world is a soft belief because it can be changed and nothing actually affects you. The hard beliefs are the ones like
The Earth is flat, and then everyone
Well,
realized after a
I
time.
mean, it depends on the person.
So yes, the hard belief to go theatrical and dramatic would be somebody's husband dies and they go mad with grief because they literally cannot deal with it. It's not an actual physical problem. It's that they believed that their partner was going to be with them forever, and that belief was so strong it actually affected them, like physically. Now let's see. I don't think it's actually a hard belief and soft belief. I think it's like fundamental and whatever. But the belief concept of there being a God, if you believe it so strongly, and you reject every other possibility, then that belief becomes literally solidifies in your mind as a hard belief, and any evidence to the contrary you ignore, you block out, you justify. The concept of being a good person, like thinking I'm a good person, I do good things, and then when you go out and hit somebody with your car, and then you have to like drive away you drive away, you don't do the right thing, but you still justify yourself as being a good person because of X, because of Y, because that he jumped out in front of me, random stuff like that. You justify these hard beliefs no matter how wrong they actually become or are.
Interesting.
And so from what it sounds like, the concept of being quote-unquote open mind is not, or having as very few or no hard beliefs. A good example would be gravity. Gravity is a hard belief for just about everybody. And so if gravity were to not affect something, or you actually trying to go into outer space, you have to adjust. You actually have to reorient your mind to be able to actually process things in space. In fact, it makes me wonder how often astronauts like accidentally move like they would on Earth, and it causes them a problem because they're not on Earth. They go shooting across the room, or they like bounce around because conceivably this firm belief, this hard belief that you haven't been able to process still is the first thing your mind goes to. Which actually makes me think of the concept of the more you think something, the bigger the neurons in your brain, the more your brain goes to those paths. So the more you think something, the more you believe it, the harder it is to change.
Interesting.
So yeah, it sounds like that hard belief concept is what you're saying is don't have an open mind. So
well,
that you're not
there are a lot that you
getting
can't
stuck
get
into
rid of, but yes.
Yeah.
As,
Well,
as,
yes.
Right. As few as possible. Yeah. Okay.
So the ideal then would be to have no hard beliefs at all?
If you wanted to be
Open-minded.
truly critical, like 100% critical thinker, you would have to be, but I don't, if that's, is that humanly
No,
possible?
I think it's the same concept as nirvana, like we were getting into the selfish concept. That could quote unquote be the ultimate goal, but actually reaching it
Sure.
sounds like it would be impossible.
Well, so then we come back to this idea. You mentioned Vulcans earlier, right? And and that to me seems like the ultimate ideal for the Vulcan is to be supremely logical, which to me means having no hard beliefs, because it's illogical to believe something without factual information, and if you have factual information that supports something, it's no longer a belief; it's a fact. And so all you have are facts. You have information and no beliefs about what those mean. Which is, I think, the Vulcan ideal, right? To be purely factual and useful.
And you can't, and not making any assumptions that you cannot actually justify.
Yeah.
So you would go to the mathematical concept of, is this likely? And then when it doesn't happen, you're like, okay, well, it had this % chance.
Yeah.
Which gets into the whole numbers thing that Spock always does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for me, from what I understand of it, it basically gets down to the concept of good thinking is critical thinking, bad thinking is not. And so at that point, you don't really define it. You can't really have it as something to base a concept on, because if you're thinking well, it's quote unquote critical. If you're not thinking well, it's not. And so totally depends on what group you're with. It totally depends on like whether you're getting something done. You could totally be thinking logically and to the best of your ability, but you don't have all the information. And so it's still critical thinking, but because you already failed before you even started, it's someone else could look at it and go, hey, you don't have all the information, so you're not quote unquote critically thinking. So it's from what I've seen, it's a concept to work towards without any actual tools, any actual like think like this and it is better behind it.
So I don't know how often this happens for you guys, and it doesn't happen for me very often anymore. At least it's more rare than. But you remember when you were a kid, and you would have this thought in your mind, and it would lead you to just anything else, and it felt like an evolutionary step for you, like you like anything, like you hear your father talking on the phone, and you think about he's probably talking about blank to about his work or something like that, and then you think about something that you at that age never would have, and you're like, I'm here now.
Yeah.
Right? I think about I'm on a different I've just transcended levels, right?
Well, I never call it transcending levels.
I mean, I'm just trying to explain it in a way that
making a connection. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And it's like this big, like, I know that. I think that way now. You know? That's kind of like what I'm getting from you, because when you're young you don't have, like you're saying, all the information. But then being able to piece it together with what you have, all these little clues, popping it together, and you're like, I have just beat that level,
and I think
move on.
I think it's actually a really appropriate analogy, because I think life, especially when you're young, is sort of like the beginning of playing an RPG. Like all the levels come quickly because you don't know anything, so you're learning basic lessons quickly, and you're gaining those levels, saying, okay, I understand how these things work. I understand how to relate to my world a little bit better now because I have this new piece of information that's really valuable. And I think as you age, for most people, as we settle into routines or whatever, like we learn those things less often. As we become quote unquote higher level, like there are fewer of those moments, and I think also people tend not to go out as much and try to seek that stuff as they do when they're young. We do tend to settle more into routines, so to become more comfortable in our lives in the way that we live them, and
definitely,
and level less often.
But
go ahead.
The levels are harder as you get older, and also when you have a toolkit that works, then there's no reason to find a new toolkit.
Right.
Or find a new tool for it.
But is that critical thinking?
That's a good question.
Because I think critical thinking would say there's always a better toolkit. There's always some way that we can do this, or there's always at the very least the possibility of doing it better, and we should entertain that the way that we're doing it, even though it works and it may work well, may not be the best way.
That being said, and I agree, there's the counter argument, or the counter critical thinking, that says it's not worth the effort to have a new tool. If you only have 10 minutes to do something, and it takes you 20 minutes to find a new tool, well, you just failed your test. So, depending on the time, the situation, you can always find a better tool. True. As soon as we have AI and the robots come and take over the world, they'll do everything way better than humans can. But what's the benefit? What's the downside?
So I mean, as far as critical thinking is concerned, certainly in the moment, I think it can be a waste of time. If you have a job that needs to be done, you shouldn't spend your time sitting around thinking about how it could be done better, right? But at the same time, I think that's part of critical thinking is this open-mindedness of willing to accept that there is probably, or at least possibly, a better way for it to be done. Because I think as soon as you stop allowing for that possibility, it becomes a hard belief, right? You're like, there's no better way than the way that I do it to build computers.
Yeah,
Because I know that I build great computers, but those are two different things, right? And as soon as I stop allowing for the belief and accepting the possibility of there being a better way, my mind becomes closed.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's the balance between having that this is as good as good enough, and this is the best.
It's a good question.
And I think that's the actual point of critical thinking, is that making the differentiation between putting a whole bunch of time into something you're never going to use, never going to learn, and then putting in enough effort that it actually is worthwhile. So there's the kids, high school, going to college. There's the argument of why teach kids stupid stuff. Why have kids have 4 years of math? Why have kids do arts and crafts? Why have kids do sports? And then you actually have to go down each of those activities, each of those lessons, and then critically think, is this actually going to be good for me? Like the kids who aren't good at sports, don't care about sports, are they going to join the football team because they can better themselves, even though they're going to go and be an artist and never touch a football ever again in their life? So critically thinking, you're trying to think well.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the concept of definition of critical thinking, trying to figure out what you're actually doing, why you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and how much effort is worth being put into it.
Sure. And I personally have a difficult time with that. I don't really have a limit of how or a good understanding of how good something can be before I stop. I like to keep trying to make it perfect,
Mhm.
which is stressful. But
Mm-hmm.
also, crafts are not stupid, John. Crafts are fucking awesome.
Yes, and well, I mean, at that point, math isn't stupid, and
It's
I mean,
true.
football is definitely stupid, but
It is, and there are a lot of stupid things that get taught to kids. I think that probably are not worth their time, unless it's something that they specifically want to pursue.
I mean, yeah, there's always just thanks for listening.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like, go ahead and scroll down a little bit and click that little red subscribe button. And if you haven't already, check the bell.